I moved home. In the last month, I would say my mental health deteriorated to the point where I had to sort of give up. Not give up in a big capital G way, just give up in a give up sort of way. I realized that I was fundamentally very unhappy and very lonely in my living situation and felt incredibly stuck there. I wasn't sleeping. I hadn't been sleeping for like 3 or 4 months, and I just felt a general sense of despair, loneliness, anxiety, and paranoia at my living situation. So I said, I'm gonna move home. I'm living at my parents' for a little bit until I can get sort of the next phase of my life going, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to having time to sit with myself and figure out what I want to do without the distraction of despair and loneliness. So, anyway, I have not made a video in a month, but I have been reading. So, to get myself back into the game, I'm going to take you on a little journey today. And on this journey, I'm going to tell you about the books I've read recently and hope to give you some smart, fun reviews to put in your pocket and take with you wherever you go. So you remember how probably moments ago I said I was going to take y'all around my day and talk about the books I've read recently in sort of a vlog style. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you when I get home. I'm currently at my old apartment. I'm already moved out, so I'm here just finishing things up. I actually just finished everything up, and I'm feeling very weird. Just really weird about everything, about this experience, about this journey that I went on, of independence, and how, like I said, it's sort of a lowercase giving up situation. I'm happy I experienced this. I had some times here, not all of them good, some of them actively bad, but I'm glad I did it. And that's what I'm trying to remind myself as I walk out of this apartment. Never to return. Yeah. Maybe I will now insert a montage of my best times here. You know, a little self-reflection before we get into the meat of this video, which is reading. So, Jake Gyllenhaal is giving Will punch through drywall and say, "I hate my mom." Bye, apartment. I look great. I'm having a really bad panic week. I don't know if people who deal with anxiety disorders and deal with panic have this happen to them where they just have constant weird physical sensations that are like cyclical with their panic. So for me, I get like really numb in certain parts of my body. I feel like my eyesight gets weird. I feel really foggy and out of it. Like, there's so many different things that happen, and then of course I'm like tensing my body, and so those sensations get worse because I'm sitting here doing this. When I have a week like this, or a time like this, when things are really bad, you know, I do everything I can that I've learned from therapy to deal with it, but really something that I've learned recently is when you're out of your coping mechanisms, the best thing to do, get a bowl of water, cold water, fill it with ice, and dunk your head in and your face in. And I just did that, and it helped. So I'm okay, guys. I'm mostly fine. I still haven't talked about a single book yet. I hope that's okay. Should I talk about one? Sure. I'm gonna go get my food, and then I'll come talk about a book. I got Bojangles as a treat. Do y'all want to see me eat mashed potatoes? because I can do that on camera. A little mukbang. What is this video? I read 2 romances recently by Lisa K. Adams, specifically the second and the third book in the Bromance Book Club series. The second book being Undercover Bromance, and the third book being Crazy Stupid Bromance. Not a huge fan of the title of that third book upon reflection, but anyway, I read the first book in 2019, and all I remember thinking about it was, oh, I like this concept of these traditionally masculine men starting a romance book club so they can learn more about romance and women, basically. And I was like, oh, that's a fun concept. And then also thinking, this feels like the start of something, specifically with ex-baseball players or baseball players being the heroes of romance books. So I didn't love that book, but I thought it was interesting. I liked the concept, and so I picked these 2 books up fairly recently. The second book I read via ebook. I really liked the second book. It follows a pastry chef who kind of works for a reverse Gordon Ramsay, meaning that in public he's really nice, but behind the scenes he's really mean and horrible. And she witnesses one day him assaulting a waitstaff member, and she decides to take him down. This is sort of a found family moment, like her and the hero of the book, who's a restaurateur, come together with their friends and family and the guys in the romance book club to take this guy down. I really enjoyed this book. I really liked the atmosphere, and I really liked the found family. I feel like Nora Roberts is kind of the queen of doing that. Also, ignore the little pitter-patter of the doggy's feet. But this book had it as well, and I just really enjoyed them all coming together. I thought it was really fun. I think it's really hard to write that sort of dynamic well in a romance, so I loved it. I also really enjoyed the main character in the fact that I hated her, because she has a very narrow view of feminism and a narrow view of what is right and what is wrong. And you see that challenge throughout this book, specifically with getting other survivors to talk about their experiences and how she believes that everyone should do it because it's the right thing. And she doesn't get until the end of the book that there are lots of circumstances that come into talking about those experiences. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was nuanced. I thought it was entertaining. The romance was meh. Honestly, it was okay. It wasn't anything special. It was fine, which I think is okay. So honestly, it reminded me a lot of a Nora Roberts book in that way. The third book I liked a lot less. It follows the main character of the second book, her best friend, who owns a bakery, and this book kind of centers around her finding out that she has a secret family. Her father, who she never had a relationship with, has an entire other family, and lo and behold, he needs an organ. Not an organ, but like an organ, and she happens to be the only donor. So, we love that drama. I liked this part of it. I thought it was really intense and kind of soapy and entertaining. I also like the fact this main character, her whole crux is that she wants to do too much. She is a people pleaser, and she always wants to do what's right, and that sometimes comes at the cost of her own happiness. I thought that was interesting. The main guy character is sort of like an Edward Snowden type, I would say, bad boy, trying to take down the government. That was kind of interesting and fun to read about. I hated their relationship. It was the worst part of this book. While the second book, it was just kind of there and it was fine. This book, I hated it. They probably broke up 4 times in this book, and there was literally 2 breakups that were almost identical, and I was like, why is this so dramatic? I do not feel like this couple is going to last, and I did not like that. But I did enjoy the vibes. I'm excited about reading the next book in this series, which seems to be a marriage by convenience, but now we're dealing with the repercussions, which sounds really fun. We got a sleeping dog here. We're doing it. The next 2 books I want to talk about are both by Rachel Lynn Solomon. The first book is The X Talk. The second is Weather Girl. The X Talk came out, I think this year or in 2020 recently. Weather Girl comes out in January. I got it as a NetGalley arc. I'll put the exact release date in the description. Both of these books are set in Seattle, and both of them have main characters who are involved in sort of local media. The X Talk, it's a local NPR station. Weather Girl, it's a local news station. And that's kind of the similarities of these 2 books. I really did not like The X Talk, and I mostly liked Weather Girl. So let's get into it. The X Talk has a lot of good things about it. I do really enjoy the fact that both of these books have a really fun relationship with career. It feels sort of like an early 2000s rom-com. Think How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, think The Wedding Planner. That is something that I miss in modern rom-coms and modern romance, so I really enjoy the focus on the career and this sort of like aspirational yet realistic career. Super fun. I also like the conversations about sexism in the workplace that I don't think go far enough here, but I do think that they are interesting. And I like the fact that there is an age gap, a small age gap between the lead woman and the lead male. I thought that was interesting that she was older. We don't get that a lot. That was all very enjoyable. My issue with this book is I did not believe their chemistry. Outside the moments when you're supposed to like believe their chemistry, I didn't feel it. I didn't feel their relationship built enough, and I felt like it was very scattered. You know what I mean? It was very scattered. I liked the main character at times. I liked her in the moments when she was by herself. Like, I like the fact that she like lives alone and she really struggles with living alone, which when I was reading that, I could really relate to for obvious reasons. My issue really was the romance I thought was pretty weak. And by the end of it, I just felt like they were going to break up. You know what I mean? I was like, this couple is not going to work out long term. I liked Weather Girl so much more. It had such great vibes and such a great dynamic. The main character is really interesting. She's very sunshiny on the outside, and is very sunshiny in general, but she struggles with depression and she has trouble dealing with that sort of situation dynamic, and she worries a lot about that with other people. Also features a male lead character that I have never read anyone like him before, if that makes sense. He is a fat male lead, and he also is a single father who had his daughter when he was like 17. I've had the thought a few times that like it's very weird to me that male leads have the same body type in every romance novel, so it was nice to read somebody with a different body type as the male lead. I also really liked their romance. I thought it was really sweet and tender. It's very slow moving, but in a realistic way. I mean, he has a daughter. She deals with mental health issues. Like, it makes sense that they just wouldn't like fall in love super quick. And they kind of get together in a fun, schemy way. I don't want to like get too much into that because I don't want to spoil anything, but it's kind of fun how they get together. Now, my issue really with this book is in the last third. I had a huge problem with the way the twist, the very small twist, is kind of presented, or the twist in general. I thought it was lazy and boring. I also had a problem with the fact that it felt very rushed by the end. The most similar book in terms of pacing, I think, that I have read as a romance like this was Evie Drake Starts Over by Linda Holmes, which is a slow-moving romance that feels like it's slow-moving throughout the entire book. This feels slow-moving and then it feels very rushed, which I did not like and I found very frustrating. But I overall really liked Weather Girl. I thought it was good and I would give it a read. Should we talk about literary fiction? I'm going to talk about a literary fiction book I read that I did not like. I read Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. I never read Anthony Doerr's, did he win a Pulitzer for that? I don't know, big fancy history time book, All the Light We Cannot See, but I did read his memoir book of essays called Four Seasons in Rome, and it's one of my favorite books of all time. It's a beautiful meditation on parenthood and family and travel and life and religion and food. I really like that book. It's beautiful. So I am a fan of Anthony Doerr. Having said that, I don't know why I read this book. Cuckoo Land is sort of a pseudo-historical fiction, pseudo-science fiction, literary fiction, sweeping novel, which focuses on this piece of historical text, this comedic fictional text called Cloud Cuckoo Land, and it has three different storylines, one being like ancient Rome or some ancient civilization, I don't remember, present day or close to present day, and then the future. And the thread in terms of meaning is all about how society can move past large-scale apocalypse, specifically war, famine, and climate change. I spend a lot of time reading about the climate crisis. I'm very interested in knowing as much as I can know about it, so I'm informed, so I can give my money where it needs to go, all those good things, right? So I was like, this sounds interesting. We're going to talk about the climate crisis, And I did sort of like elements of that. The end of this book has an interesting idea of like, what does an Earth look like when society is collapsed, and how do we move forward in a positive way? So I did enjoy that element of it. But overall, it just felt very heavy-handed. It felt like it lacked some clarity and nuance. And this is a very nuanced, complicated topic. And it just felt a little bit like, you know what I mean? Like just a little too fast, a little too hard, and a little lacking something. Also, it reminded me a lot of the movie Downsizing, which is a movie I hate, which is also about the climate crisis, but in the most Western, weird, white guy way possible. I cannot stand that movie, and it had similar vibes to that. Better vibes, but similar vibes. So that bothered me. Also, Cloud Cuckoo Land, the name of a fictional universe in the Chris Pratt vehicle, the Lego movie. So that was stuck in my head while reading this book. Overall, do I think this book is amazing? No. Did I enjoy it? Not really. Did it make me feel weird? Yes. But do I think it's bad? Not necessarily. I think by the end of it, it's trying to do something positive. I just don't think it does a very good job of it all the way through. Speaking of climate change, it is so warm right now. It's like 72 degrees. Living in the South is very weird because winter is sort of just a concept that we get spurts and bouts of, but while I'm enjoying this weather and it's helping my seasonal depression immensely, the fact it was like 30 degrees this morning and now it's 70 is weird. It's a little too warm. Anyway, links in the bio to donate to climate crisis organizations. I digress. Let's talk about 2 literary romances I read recently. I read the book Oh Beautiful World, Where Are You?, which surprised me because I liked it. And I am not a fan of Sally Rooney, but I enjoyed this book. This book follows 2 friends who have a complicated relationship, and the fact that they have a complicated relationship is really the only thing going on in this book, and their relationships to people as well. It is a romance, but I would say it's a romance in a Sondheim, R.I.P. sort of way. Think of the musical Company. There's a sense of parody, comedy, sadness, and like stage level, play level drama going on here. I really enjoyed it. It also kind of felt like a Happy Tennessee Williams play at times, like a lot of drunken fighting and a lot of like resentment. But by the end, there was a hopefulness about it. This book also touches on the climate crisis in a way that I really liked. I thought it felt really personal by the end, specifically with the characters deciding to have children or not. I really liked this book. It shocked me how much I liked it, and I really hope that Sally Rooney continues to write like this sort of romance because it's interesting. Like, it does have a sharpness and a lack of warmth to it, but there's still a lot of warmth in it. And I much prefer that over her, like, you know, BBC drama, sad, you know, books that are just people grunting and not wanting to be together because circumstance. You know what this is? This is Fleabag, if Fleabag had a happy ending. Yeah. I'm going to move locations to talk about the other literary romance. I've slightly changed positions, but that's fine. The other literary romance that I read was 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. Basically, it's about 2 writers, very different kinds of writers. The main character, he's a literary fiction writer, and the main lady character, she is an erotic fantasy writer, so very, very different kinds of writers. And they happen to have a past when they were teenagers. They spent 7 days together and kind of saved each other in a way. They both struggled with self-harm, mental illness, and addiction, specifically the male character. And they spent this time together, and then they were ripped apart, and then years later, they're in very different places in their lives from when they were teenagers, and they reconnect and have another 7 days in June, this time as adults. The main lady character deals with chronic illness, specifically migraines, and has to grapple with that in her daily life. And she also has a daughter, like a 12-year-old daughter, who's very like plucky and funny. And then he like is now sober and really wants to change his life and his relationships. This book
is both really funny and fun and entertaining, and also, again, very serious, and I really enjoyed it. Also, this book had crazy good chemistry between the leads. And my final point is, like, the guy character in this book, I legitimately was like, why aren't all male characters written like him? I'm so used to romance male leads, specifically in relationships between a man and a woman, where the man is like, you know, at best, like the men that I love in romance, like an Emily Henry novel, like he's, you know, kind of grumpy on the outside, or maybe reserved on the outside, but has all this like secret love and passion for the woman. This guy just like leaves it all out on the floor. And I loved reading that. He felt so real in a way that I didn't realize was lacking in some other romances. So I really, really liked this book. I thought it was very, very good and very, very fun and very interesting. I've had too much to drink tonight. Staring Camp right in the eye. I want to talk to y'all about a lot of nonfiction that I read. I struggle with talking about nonfiction because I read mostly memoirs when I read nonfiction, and that feels like I'm judging someone's life. And that is not what I'm trying to do. So, luckily, I liked all these books, so I don't have really anything negative to say about any of them. So I'm just going to share with you a bunch of great nonfiction, starting with one I feel like a lot of people read this year, and that is Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. Michelle Zauner is the lead of one of my favorite bands, Japanese Breakfast, so I was very excited to pick this up. I really loved this book. This book is an incredibly honest, incredibly real, incredibly intense memoir about Michelle Zauner's relationship with her mother, sometimes fraught relationship, sometimes great relationship, and her mother's illness and eventually her passing. It is a book about culture and food and family, and specifically the relationship between a mother and a daughter. I love this book. I thought it was so beautiful and heart-wrenching and really, really good, and I would definitely recommend it. Also, listen to their last record, because it's really good. Once again, blinking back the sun. Next little book that I read that was a nonfiction moment. My brain's not working. What did I read? I read Perfect Sound Whatever by James A. Caster. I'm a huge fan of James A. Caster's comedy. He's very, very funny. This book, though, is not funny. Let me just say that right now. If you're a James A. Caster fan and you're like, I love that ginger boy, he's so good, I love that clip from Great British Bake Off.
Started making it, had a breakdown. Bon appetit.
Let me tell you, this is not a funny book. This book oscillates between being a book about how he believes 2016 was the greatest year of music of all time, and follows him writing about that music, specifically in a way that I would best describe as like a freshman year of college book report. He's good at writing about the music in a very base sense. You get an idea of the musician, the music that he's talking about, and his taste is very wide. It's huge and very interesting, and you learn about music you probably would have never heard about, legitimately never heard about, which I liked. But there is a simpleness to his writing when he talks about music that I wasn't a huge fan of. Now, when he talks about his personal life, specifically when he was discovering this music that came out in 2016, he was going through a huge breakdown psychologically, and he talks about that breakdown, and it gets worse and worse as the book goes on in terms of his breakdown. It's very, very intense, it's very honest, and that's something to note. It's not a funny book. It's a book that's half incredibly personal, half kind of like a book report. So I enjoyed it, and I really surprised myself by how much I enjoyed it by the end. But it definitely, like, surprised me, because I thought it was going to be funnier than it was. And that's on me. Finding different places to do this is really funny. This is on my parents' truck. Okay, let's talk about this book. Sometimes I trip up on how happy we could be. This is a collection of essays by Nicole Perkins. I became a fan of Nicole Perkins through her podcast Thirst Aid Kit, which she did with another writer, where they talked about hot people. It was really fun. It was very entertaining. So she's really funny, and I knew that she was really funny, so I was interested in picking this up. This book talks a lot about sex and sexuality and her relationship with romance, herself, religion, her family. I thought it was very good. I thought it was very digestible, while also being unafraid, if that makes sense. Like, everything feels like you can kind of get into it pretty easily. but also she's so honest about herself, and she's so honest about her misgivings and her screw-ups in a way that I've never really read before. There's just an unabashed honesty here that I think is really valuable. I really enjoyed this book. I would definitely pick it up. If you like short essay collections, this one isn't super long, and I just overall really liked it, and I thought it was really, really entertaining and really interesting and very unafraid. Talked about that, 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 talked about that. One left. Maybe one of my favorite books of the year I read very recently, and that is Wine Girl by Victoria James. Wine Girl is a memoir about Victoria James being the youngest sommelier in the country when she became a master sommelier or a certified sommelier when she was 21. This book was so good. Okay, I really thought that this book was just going to be about a rich white girl who just kind of like became a sommelier, and it was just like, oh, look at her, she's like a, you know, like maybe her family's French, so she started drinking young and then she became a sommelier like super young. No, this book is a really brutal book, and it follows Victoria James' very troubled, abusive childhood into her time in the restaurant industry and wine industry that was also very abusive. I would say a good 80% of this book is Victoria James talking about the abuse that she faced. I mean, it's like relentless and horrific, while also celebrating her love of education and how sometimes her love of education would push past the point of it being healthy, which I thought was really interesting. And then by the end, you have this like very satisfying, really nice moment where she seems really happy and she's in a really good place in her life. But this book is brutal, and this book really is a testament to somebody who's really unafraid to share their experiences in order to make an industry better. I really liked this book. It definitely made me love wine more, but hate the wine industry in a way that I didn't even think was possible. I loved it. It was really, really good. If you're a fan of food or wine or just interesting memoirs from women in predominantly male industries, I would give this a read. I thought it was really good. Can I just do this outro on the floor? Okay, so this video I know was probably quite the experience. But I hope y'all enjoyed it. I miss making videos. I'm ready for it to be a part of my life again. And I have some videos that are definitely going to be coming up soon. So yes, please comment. Tell me your thoughts. I'd love to know your thoughts on any of these books or anything I talked about in this video. I hope y'all have a lovely day.